brokenness and pain is all I know. I won't be shaken. Oh, I won't be shaken. 'Cause my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Shame no longer has a place to hide, and I am not a captive to the lies. I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. Oh, I won't be shaken. I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh yeah, this power that can break off every chain. This power that can empty out a grave. This resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Yeah. One more time, yeah. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Standing in your love. Oh, I'm standing in your
Staff, Pastor Dan and Pastor Brian and I, we all preach from this. And when we give our messages from this, this is straight out of there. So whenever, if you miss a day, then you know what we talked about. It's right there, and we did that on purpose. Well, today's kind of passage, message, whatever you want to call it, comes out of 2 Samuel chapter 17. And this is an exciting part of the Bible. This is where, when people say, the Bible is so boring, I just look at them and I go, what are you reading? Because the Bible that I read is not boring. Now, are there boring parts? Absolutely. There's a chapter after chapter of inventory of what the people of Israel brought with them. There are chapters describing just the measurements of the temple. There are chapters after chapter that describe the lineage, who had who and who had how many troops. And it just, yes, I get that. But right now we are not in boring. Let me share with you how this is not boring. In chapter 17, this right here is straight Hollywood blockbuster movie happening right now. Like crazy stuff. If you don't remember, if you haven't been following, you guys know, or you don't know, Absalom is the son of David, one of the sons of David. Previous chapters, he had retaliated against his brother Amnon, who raped his sister Tamar. So he killed him. Then he was banished, or actually he exiled himself, although David didn't really stop him. But then they reconciled and welcomed him back and said, my son, you're back. But then Absalom starts surrounding himself with the wrong people, and he just creates this noise in his head that makes him think that he should be the king. And so he starts all of this stuff, and he revolts against David. And right at the beginning of it, right when all of David's advisors said, gather now, let's go take care of this punk kid before he makes any damage, David stops and says, no, I'm leaving. I will not divide this country. I will not kill my own people. I'm just going to leave. And he just whisper in the night kind of leaves. Well, of course, Absalom knows that David is a threat. His advisors tell him he's a threat, so he pursues David. So in chapter 17, here's where things get really interesting. Hushai is a double agent for David. He's one of David's advisors. He says to David, I'm going to stay and I'm going to give bad advice to Absalom. So he does. Bad after advice after advice. He keeps giving it to him, to the point where it's like, come on, guys, like let's obviously he's trying to, set you guys up, but they don't pick this up. Here's a double agent. Again, David runs from his son. It's father versus son. It's Luke versus Vader. There's a civil war. There's espionage. All of this stuff's happening. Even at one point, David hides in a well at this farmhouse. The woman covers the well with cloth and puts spices on it like she's drying it, so that when the people show up, they look over, they search everywhere, can't find him. They don't look inside the well because it just looks like she's just drying stuff, and they move on, and he's saved. And then later, at the end of that chapter, he is fed and he is provided for, and they give him all of this stuff so that he can survive. All these people, they love David. And it made me think of a word. If I had to pick a word of the day, it's provision. God provides. He does. And that word kept bouncing in my head as I was reading through this. God provides, God provides, God provides. And it shows even more if you go to John chapter 19, the end of Jesus' life. This is our last gospel for this year. Then we're moving on into Acts and Romans and the epistles, and really some really good chapters as well too. But here's the very, very end of Jesus' death. He is crucified. He's up on the cross. He knows that he's only got a few moments left, and he stops in that moment to provide for someone else. And here's what he does. In verse 25, standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, he said to her, "Dear woman, here is your son." And he said to this disciple, "Here is your mother." And from then on, the disciple took her into his home. Again, such an amazing picture of God's provision. Here he is, knows that in a few moments he's going to utter the words, "It is finished," that he's going to give up his soul or his body, and he's going to die for us, and he's been bleeding for us, and he's going to resolve man and God once and for all. As he's going to resolve, again, provision. But even before all of that, there's an earthly mother who had been taking care of him for so long, who's standing there probably heartbroken, just destroyed that her firstborn son is stretched out on a cross, and unfairly. And in that moment, he says, "I want you to provide for my mom." And he looks at his disciples, and he looks deep into them and into her. And he says, "I'm going to give you one more provision right here." And he just takes this moment to recognize the humanity that is his mother. God provides. Sometimes it's frustrating because life will come at you and you're just not ready. No one knew this was happening this year with lockdowns and furloughs and Boeing making all these cuts. And I know many of you out there work for Boeing. We have a lot of Boeing employees that go to our different campuses, and I know it's a time of uncertainty. But as I was reading through this, again, the idea of provision kept popping into my head. God provides. He always provides. Maybe not exactly when we think we want it or in the way that we think we want it. He still always provides. And in this moment, I have no doubt that he's going to provide. And if it's not at Boeing, he's going to provide in another situation for you. I don't know if you guys are worried about your next paycheck, or if you're going to be able to buy groceries, or where you're at, or maybe there's a relationship that has just been deteriorating and you're just wondering, how is this going to resolve? Or maybe your mental health has just been suffering and struggling because of what has been happening in our world between the coronavirus and our civil unrest in Minnesota and just this mess that it seems like our world is in. And you think, wow, God, what are you going to do? In those moments, it can be so easy to question whether or not God is even here. And I promise you, he is. I guarantee you that David, when he's running from Absalom, when his entire nation is supporting his son and his son wants him dead, and when he's hiding in a well, the king of Israel is hiding in a well while the entire nation around him is in turmoil, I guarantee you, he was worried. He probably had some doubt because David is human. And he probably thought, how am I going to get out of this? God, what are you going to do through this? How are you going to provide? And God provided for David time and time after again. He just did because he loves David and he loves us. So right now, I don't know where you're at. I don't know if there needs to be peace provided in you, or there's anxiety that needs to be removed and you just need a provision of calmness. I don't know where you're at, but I know that God does. So when I'm done here and the music plays afterwards, it always plays for a few moments, just take a few moments and just pray and ask that God provide for you whatever it is right in your heart that you think you're missing. But before you do, I want you to take 10 seconds and I want you to just ask God, God, help me to pray the right prayer. And just pause for 10 seconds and then begin to pray. Just take a moment to stop, to breathe, to ask God what you should ask for, and then pray. Hopefully today finds you well. I know it's a little dreary out today, but we live in the Pacific Northwest. Eventually the sun will come out. And in whatever situation you're in, I know one day the sun will come out for you as well too. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.